Yeah, what's up guys? True Kingston here, and Visions of Mana released in September of 2024 without much hype or notoriety, but it was a stack year for RPGs, I'll be honest with you, because they had games like Metaphor ReFantazio, Final Fantasy 16, and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Is that just a... yes. Visions of Mana is my first game ever in the Mana series, and I always wanted to play one, but I could never find one of those games, and on top of that we were broke. But that's besides the point. This was a chance to hop in. It was my first time ever putting in PTO at work so I can stay home and play the game at launch. That's enough of my tragic anime backstory though. Let's talk about the Mana Tree, the Mana Goddess, and my personal journey through Visions of Mana. This isn't going to be a full story breakdown. I'll give you a gist of what happens. There will be spoilers in this explanation though. The story starts with these two, Liza and Orin, running away from the drying pan fucking mafia.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
Hey, I know. I'll use my trusty frying pan as a drying pan.
Turns out Liza has been chosen as a Jehovah's Witness of her village to become an alm, a person blessed by an elemental spirit to give their life to the Mana Tree, so the kind, beautiful, and loving Mana Goddess can keep the world stable. What happens if you ignore this responsibility? Well, drastic measures have to be taken. The spirits will just have to make sure your village is no pain. Nothing personal, just business. Now tell me, how does this make any sense? Why would you want this job? People are so glad to being on there hoping to be it, so you wanna have the noble sacrifice until you realize your ass about to be away from your loved ones one way or another. I ain't gonna lie, me personally, if it was me, I'm dipping. I am not taking responsibility. If I'm gonna be away from them, all y'all can die. I got a little off track there. I got a little off track there, sorry about that. But anyway, Liza gets frozen in stone by the spirit of Earth, and Orin ran away since she didn't want to do her responsibility. Next, we meet Val and Hina, the main characters of the game. Val is a soul guard. He's someone that's trained to protect the alms on their journey to the Mana Tree. The fairy arrives and announces that Hina is the alm of fire. With that info, Val and Hina head off on their journey to find the other alms. They head to a village full of dragon people. Here you meet Karina, a brash girl with a country accent. Listen, I played the game in English, but it don't matter, country accents are hot, okay? Karina is mad at the village because they don't allow her to leave. Karina is the only one that can summon the fairy, but she's too busy simping and hating the villagers to summon the fairy. After some convincing, she summons the fairy and is officially chosen as the Alm of Wind. Next we head to Etern, a city filled with furries. It would be if the guy that threatens us mortally didn't make a big oopsie and break the lunar sun glass and send most of these people through time. Morley eventually moves on after being chosen as the Alm of the Moon, and we head to the kingdom of Illistania. I always call it Illistania. I know it's Illistana. Don't fucking judge me. Here we meet the beautiful, luscious, voluptuous, wait a second. Forgot I was a coordinator for a second. We meet the beautiful Queen Palomena. In my opinion, this is the best part of the story for how interesting it is. When we get to Illistania, we find out that the Alm of Water was already chosen. We later find out it's Palomena, but she's keeping it hidden, so she isn't forced to go on the journey right away. Passar is corrupt and trying to control the throne. This is some short, fat, goddamn furry. Well, they're not furries because they got tails, but there's already furries. There's a lot of confusing shit. But he's corrupt and he's trying to control the throne. Palomena is training her little brother Ian to take the throne in her absence and gain the people's trust. The flow of water Illistania stops and we later find out it was Passar behind it. After this, Hina admits to Val she's scared of the end of the journey since she has to die for the Mana Tree. Which, I would be too, like I said. That's a terrible job to have. They both basically admit their love for each other. Then Orin appears in Illistania and has a proposition for Val and Hina. He can end the cycle of alms sacrificing themselves for the Mana Tree. Val and Hina go with him to an island and Orin does a spell that releases an energy from Hina. Hina dies from this and gets turned into a core stone. The core stone is basically a physical manifestation of a soul. Orin takes her core stone and leaves, but Val goes back to the party doubtful of his skills now, and his ability to protect anyone after what happened to Hina. And the worst scene in the game happens, bro. I hate this shit.
You're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself. But Orin isn't the only one to blame for this fiasco.
I know.
You know? Like you know that it's your whole job to prevent things like this from
Oh,
happening?
you better calm the fuck down, bitch. Hold on. You trying to make me hate you real fast. Morally about to get on the fucking team and keep you talking like this, bitch. The party leaves and we eventually end up at Guju, the Earth village that was destroyed. Val finds out that Liza, the woman from the beginning that trained him, was the Earth Arm and she ran from her duty. That's why she was frozen in stone. We save the Earth Spirit from a monster, and we try to Jack and Beanstar our way up to the Verdes Burrow, where we meet a sapling named Jule. His friends are asleep and they can't defend themselves, so Jule usually takes care of them. He hasn't seen Orin and he gets attacked by a monster. After we defeat the monster for him, he is chosen as the Arm of Wood. Then we run into Orin in the Sanctuary of Mana, and he uses Hina's Core Stone and grabs the Mana Sword, planning to stop the Arm's sacrifice once and for all. Once Orin wakes up, Ancient Sephiroth. Oh, this is when the game starts taking a downturn, bro. This is when we meet the warrior Delafos. Delafos is an old warrior from the Mana Goddess. He takes the Mana Sword and heads for Guju. We find Orin fighting Delafos and he gets killed and turned into a Core Stone along with Liza. After a lot of extremely boring shit on the Darkness Island Lagrazzo, Val becomes the Arm of Light. Oh, and I guess Aish, a scholar from Lagrazzo, became the Arm of Darkness. Now that we have all 8 arms, we head to the Sanctuary of Mana. Delafos releases sealed monsters called Benevodons that try to destroy the Mana Tree, but the bear protects it. Now we have to go defeat them. After this, we tie up loose ends with the entire party, then go to fight Delafos for the last time. After beating the brakes off him, stupidity really ensues here. Delafos literally turns into a mech, and we fight him again. Val grabs the Mana Sword and defeats Delafos, killing him. Then Delafos reunites with the soul of his wife after he dies. The arms all sacrifice themselves to the tree, except Val, who doesn't die for some reason. He lives his life until old age and passes away. The story ends with Val telling Hina the story of everything that happened since she died, now that their souls are together in the Mana Tree. This story was really good in some places, I won't lie. Specifically Illistania in the turn, but super boring and weak elsewhere. Especially in the ending in the whole Delafos part. He's a typical mad guy that wife died character. I get why he's mad and he hates the Mana Gods. He feels that she betrayed him because his wife died after their promise, but it's so played out. I will say that all the party members are pretty well developed. Val isn't at first, but the game shows his story. Karina acting like a rebellious kid makes sense since everyone, including her parents, shoots down her dreams, but they still want her to do the wind dying ceremony, and she's literally the only one that can summon the fairy. That's a few examples, but let's get to the meat and potatoes of this game. The gameplay. Visions of Mana's gameplay is kind of hard to cover without going over elemental plots first, so let's get that out of the way. Elemental plots are the skill trees of the game, but every elemental plot comes with a new outfit for the character, and abilities and weapons. Val, for example, starts the game with no elemental plot and a longsword, but if you swap Val to the light elemental plot, he gains a lance and shield and he becomes a tank able to charge up his shield to be able to block attacks. He also gets buffs for his team, like giving them elemental resistances. This applies to every character. Every character gets 3 weapons at least, and usually plays pretty different. Every elemental plot comes with an elemental vessel, which all have different effects and uses. The Moon Elemental Vessel, for example, can slow time in an AoE, allowing you to mow down enemies. It's really good for these, I don't know how they haven't been sued yet, Sonic ripoffs. Every elemental vessel also has an elemental break that you will unlock later in the skill tree. Elemental breaks change the whole battlefield and have varying effects. The Earth Vessel will make meteors fall down, for example, while the Water Vessel will trap enemies in bubbles and fill the battlefield with water, making you swim. There's also Class Strikes, which are cinematic ultimate attacks, which change based on your elemental plot and hits enemies on the screen. There's also support characters, but they basically don't matter. Hina can heal you a bit, but it's irrelevant because early game Candy will get the job done, and it's really easy to get. Aish, I don't even know what he does, and Ramco is just the mascot as far as I'm concerned. Unless you have Karina on your team, you rarely ever have a support character. There is individual spells in the game, which are tied to the elemental plots. This is the main way you learn spells. You will lose certain buffs and abilities if you swap your elemental plot. Like I loved using Water Palamina because she used the Scythe and some other reasons. But she was so weak outside of her water spells. I swapped to Earth Palamina and never looked back. She became a full-on mage, never swinging the weapon and spamming spells. There's items in the game called seeds that allow you to use spells you normally wouldn't. Learn while they're equipped. These are super valuable. I used one that boosted my magic damage and spell cast speed, and I felt unstoppable chunking off a boss's health. The exploration was extremely unrewarding most of the time in Visions of Mana. Opening chests most of the time just gave you worthless armor, weapons, or random item you already had 99% of the time. Oh, thanks Visions of Mana. I really need another piece of candy. Do I look like James Woods?
Ooh, a piece of candy.
Lost myself for a moment there. The world isn't particularly interesting or beautiful in my opinion. Besides very specific areas like the Sky Island or Elistania, it wasn't very satisfying to explore. Even later when you unlock Vuskov and Flammy for water and flight travel, it's super underutilized. Since the world isn't actually connected, it's a bad implementation of fast travel basically. Speaking of Vuskov, they made him useless once you get Flammy. Flammy is better because unlike Vuskov, she can't be blocked by the environment, and she gets access to the Sky Island. The one saving grace are some of the dungeons have fun exploration, like in Lograzzo, where you use the dark vessel like a grappling hook, or the underwater ruins where you float up bubbles to traverse. The only satisfying item to collect is Dud Bear Honey, since it can be given to the Dud Bears to get elixirs which raise your base stats, and Goddess Scales later to respect your plot points. The sense of progression is pretty weak in my opinion though. The weapons and armors you get are very basic. All sense of progression comes from seeds and plots. These small stat boosts from weapons and elixirs don't feel like they add up. Meanwhile, I'll get a skill that gives me 25% water damage buff or something like that, and it immediately feels like a power spike. You go from feeling like a fly to a grizzly bear in an instant. If I take that seed off though, I go back to being a fly on the dime. I'm not a fan of that at all. Morley is the only character I felt the small stat changes with, and that's because Moon Morley has the most balls to the wall stat changes in the game. If you have a skill that straight up just gives you 70% crit rate, and since these small stats are multiplied by his crit damage, and he attacks really fast in his moon form, Morley gets to feel the power of small stats. He wasn't even going to be on my team initially, but he grew on me as I played him and was the most fun character besides Palamina for me. The world building isn't the worst I've seen in Visions of Mana, but it isn't anything spectacular either. I don't care about how many locations the game has, it's more about are the locations fleshed out. Do they feel like they have their own culture? Does the world feel lively? Does every area convey what it should? I'd say on the basic level, Visions of Mana does this very well for the most part. Val's Village of Tiania has their fire festival and is known as the place where soul guards are trained. Longren doesn't really feel unique. Dragon people live here and they do nothing with that concept. Etern is very unique since it's an abandoned town that was destroyed by one of your party members. Anything related to Morley is just goated because he's a GOAT character clearly, I'm not even gonna lie about that. Elistania is the bustling port town of the game and it feels relatively lively, but they do nothing with the tailed race. There's no reason for them to not be humans at that point. They're supposed to be prideful of their tails, but they never even mention them. Jule in the Vertius Borough has a ton of identity, as is where saplings live, and it's a link to the old world, and leads to the Mana Goddess and the Mana Tree. The Darkness Island Lograzzo had some cool stuff I guess, like the rotating rooms and hidden secrets since it's a town of scholars. The other areas outside of the Sky Island are pretty basic though. Like you just have a basic volcano fiery area in just the Snow Town, but I will say the Snow Town had culture because they had a play that taught you about Delafos. I just hate Delafos, so I don't care about that shit. In conclusion, Visions of Mana isn't a bad game in particular. It was very underwhelming for me, but that may be my own fault. I may have let the hype get to me as I was so happy to finally be able to try a game in the series I want to play as a kid. I can't recommend this game at full price, but if you catch it on sale for about 40 bucks or less, I'd say it's worth picking up. Its graphics aren't very good, and has a very unique art style, especially among anime games. Its combat is pretty satisfying once you get to mid-game. I mean, once I got my team locked down, I flew through the game with ease. Earth Palamina is so cheap since she can protect herself and just spam spells, and it was a ton of fun once you get far enough into the game with all the crazy spells. The story actually had me invested too. I was actually shocked and sad at Hina's death. My favorite character, Karina, became my most hated by the end, which is really rare for me. And Morley, my least favorite character from when I saw the trailer, became my favorite, which is doubly as rare for me. It's a perfectly fine game, but I see how games like Granblue Fantasy Relink and Metaphor Reef Fantasio overshadowed it. If you buy the game, I certainly hope you enjoy it, because I had a ton of fun. Just don't pay attention to De La Soul's story. But with all of that being said, none of that will stop me from barking like a dog for Palomena, my queen, though.